If you've launched a feature on Monday, watched it flop Tuesday, tweaked messaging on Wednesday, and panicked by Friday, you know how exhausting this feels. You end the week completely lost. You no longer know whether your product is broken, the market is dead, or if you're the one sabotaging the launch by constantly changing rules. The truth is, you are probably not a bad founder. You are just being trained by one of the worst teachers on earth, short-term market feedback. The market will gladly punish a well-researched strategy, ignore your patience, and then reward a completely undisciplined fluke, like a lucky off-the-cuff viral post. We assume feedback looks like the left, a straight arrow delivering a clear lesson. But on the right is reality, a chaotic, scribbled path missing the target completely, doing it just often enough to make the wrong lesson feel convincing. 95% of failing startups do so because founders react to these false lessons one tiny failure at a time. They keep changing the test while it is still running. To survive this environment, you have to borrow a totally different approach. You must adopt the rigid, unfeeling decision architecture used by elite financial risk managers. Surviving extreme uncertainty means sacrificing the emotional comfort of constant tinkering. You have to trade the thrill of being agile for the strict discipline of fixed variable testing. Most founders respond to early confusion by consuming more information. They spend the weekend hunting down a new growth hack or a fresh marketing strategy to solve their immediate pain. But at a certain point, more information stops solving the underlying problem. It just supplies you with more ways to interfere with the plan you already have. The danger is that almost any failed startup decision can be given a logical explanation afterward. So whenever your current approach loses money, another convincing theory is waiting to replace it. As a result, you never stay with one definition long enough to collect clean evidence. You ruin the data before it even arrives. Elite operators do the exact opposite. They strictly separate learning from execution. Outside of business hours, they research, test, and challenge their ideas. But during a launch, they execute the exact version that was already decided. This separation matters for one absolute rule. Business strategy only becomes measurable when it stops changing. Complexity makes you feel intelligent while giving you endless excuses. A simple, fixed system is brutally honest. You either followed the exact plan or you didn't, leaving absolutely no room for a bad idea to hide from the data. Systemization means locking in a single, predictable strategy and refusing to add new exceptions every time you hit a roadblock. It requires a heavy trade-off. You have to give up the feeling of being a visionary genius who pivots on a dime and submit to the repetitive boredom of a fixed process. To enforce this, every single campaign or feature must pass through a strict framework we call the 3 gates before a single dollar of capital is spent. Let's look at how they operate. The first gate is location. Where exactly does this idea make logical sense? This is the specific context, market condition, or target audience identified before you make a move. The second gate is the trigger. What exact undeniable customer action or metric must happen before you execute the plan? It needs to be clear enough to answer with a simple yes or no. The third gate is invalidation. What specific, predetermined market behavior proves that this particular idea is incorrect? This is the hardest part for founders. Your invalidation point must be defined before the money is spent. It is not the maximum amount of emotional pain you can tolerate when things go poorly. You have to actively fight the sunk cost fallacy. You cannot give a failing idea one more week to turn around, just because the loss feels too ugly to look at. By strictly enforcing these 3 gates, you generate clean, untampered data about your core business engine. This rigid structure isolates the truth. It tells you exactly whether a failure happened because the market rejected the idea or because you simply failed to follow your own plan. Most founders only use one scoreboard, revenue. Money in the bank means green is good and red is bad. But this tricks you into terrible habits. This quadrant chart shows how elite founders fix this. They evaluate every launch using 2 scoreboards, one for process adherence on the bottom and one for financial result on the side. A good process with a profit is an easy win. A good process with a loss is just normal statistical variance. It stings, but you ignore it and run the play again. A bad process with a bad result is an obvious mistake. It hurts, but it is easy to diagnose and fix quickly. The real danger zone is here. a bad process with a good result. Think of a lucky, off-script sales call that somehow closes. If you only look at revenue, the market just paid you to become worse. This demands a harsh trade-off. You must have the discipline to reprimand your team and yourself for breaking the process, even if it resulted in a closed deal. Scoring the decisions separately from the money protects a perfectly valid working process from being prematurely abandoned just because of a normal short-term loss. Separating the decision from the result keeps you honest. It prevents you from taking a lucky fluke and trying to scale it into a company-killing operational disaster. If your operations feel like a pile of conflicting ideas right now, run the 30-rep reset. Commit to 30 identical sales pitches or marketing runs without altering the messaging once. The trade-off here is severe. You have to willingly watch a flawed process fail 30 times in a row without jumping in to save a short-term conversion. But the payoff is worth it. You generate a statistically significant sample size that cuts through the noise and provides long-term clarity. When those 30 reps are done, you bring the data to this scorecard, the founder's diagnostic. Let's look at how it separates confusion into specific problems. First, if you followed the process perfectly across all 30 reps and your expectancy is clearly negative, stop blaming your execution. Your core product or strategy lacks an edge and needs a pivot. Second, if the planned strategy should work on paper but your live execution rate is poor, a new tool isn't the answer. There is an operational leak between your plan and your team's actions. A quick caveat: if you are an ideation phase founder without an MVP, ignore this advice. You still need open-ended exploration to find your footing, not rigid testing. But for everyone else, the path is clear. Elite founders don't try to predict the entire market. They standardize their execution so that clean, unbroken data can reveal the undeniable truth of their business.